This first clip we're going to do is about the Nord Stream pipeline, Nord Stream 2 in particular. Nord Stream 1 was, I guess, injured, damaged, still got a lot of emotional issues. It's just not performing like it used to. They've got it on a little blue pill, but, you know, it's been around for a while, and it's just, I think it's more of an excitement thing. It might not be a medical version of it. It might be more psychological, where Nord Stream is having problems with the pipeline. But 2 in particular had a giant hole in it. That giant hole, by the way, was blown in it, and I'm saying this IMHO, by Russia using a pig, which, not a live pig, not a pig, not a feral pig, not a pipeline inspection gadget, which is a little device that they scoot through there to check for leaks and that kind of stuff. And all you got to do is attach some bomb to it, set it to however long it takes to get out there, send the fucking thing by remote control, and pooey. You don't even need anybody in the neighborhood. And interesting, the hole blows out, which you would see if an explosion happened inside the pipe. You see. Russia's known for a whole long while. They've known for quite some time, if I do say so my damn self, that what caused it. They got sensors and cameras all along the thing. At least that's what they told the Europeans when they were building the goddamn thing. Now, they might have been lying. They might have been bullshitting. But at the very least, you would want, I guess, you wouldn't want speculation. You'd want evidence. You'd want something. You'd want proof that the U.S. did it. Oh, lucky us. What are the odds? On the Jimmy Dore Show, proof the U.S. did it. Sure, we did it. We just did it, and we're going to do it again. I love to do it. You love to do it. Proof the U.S. did it. It's like a ninth grader talking about their friend that they think had sex. They did it. Did you hear that Mark and Carolyn did it? They did it. Ew. Did what? It. They did it. Proof U.S. did it. And look at Seymour Hersh, just like, hate being right all the time. And look at Biden staring off into the middle distance, looking like a commander-in-chief, with a giant Seymour Hersh floating in the ocean behind him, going, you did this to me. I can't even swim. Now, of course he did it. Aaron Mate is filling in, apparently. Let's see how this goes.
This weird new tool is quickly becoming the most popular Christmas gift for gardeners in 2022.
All right.
Hey, everybody. It's the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm Aaron Mate, here with American.
Oh, he pronounces it mate. That's interesting. That's new, at least. Yeah, it's 10 minutes long, this clip. We're going to know what we need to know in 5 minutes. If we don't, that's his fault, and fuck this. But here we go.
It's comedian Kurt Metzger. I'm sitting in for Jimmy. And here is the story that recently dropped. This is from Seymour Hersh.
Yes, emphasis on story. How America took out the Nord Stream pipeline. Seymour Hersh. There you go.
The most impactful and decorated journalists of all time. And this is the headline. How America took out the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, how? That's the important thing. Let's hear the how, because that interests me.
New York Times called it a mystery, but the U.S. executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now.
Until now. Tune in for the new Netflix series, Under the Sea. Under the sea. We blow up the pipeline. And all right.
And there's a picture of it. And this was back in September 2022 when... And these two major pipelines, the Nord Stream 2.
Well, there's a picture of it. It's guys. Did you guys know it was blown up? The picture does it for me. Look how shocking that is. Look at that whole. Look at the water all frothing and stuff. And yeah,
connecting Russia to Germany.
Yes, emotionally more than it's more like an umbilical cord. You know, it was Germany didn't want to cut the cord. Russia felt like it had to.
Bringing cheap Russian energy to Germany and the rest of Europe.
Well, no, it might be cheap in terms of cash. It's very expensive in terms of human life. I guess it depends on what you measure value in, right? Right? Because technically speaking, if you rob a bank and kill everybody in there, it's cheap money. You didn't have to work very hard. They weren't even armed. Maybe the guard had a gun, but you had machine guns and shotguns and bombs or whatever the fuck you guys were using. Might have cut, a little bit of expense, but pretty cheap by compared to earning it and the time expenditure and all the investment that you would have needed to earn that amount of money. Holy shit, right? Incredibly cheap. Of course, a lot of people had to die in the process. So
we're bombed, and
yeah, they were totally bombed out, man.
Nobody wanted to think about who did it. We all kind of forgot.
By the way, everybody talked about who did it and who done it, and saying it was bombed is still a lie. Is still not telling you, because again, if it's yours, can you bomb your own thing? I don't think so. You can destroy it. You can use a bomb to blow it up, but you're not bombing it. Also, placing a bomb on something and blowing it up is not bombing something. That's usually. Anyways,
forgot about it. Well,
I watched clips where Jeffrey Sachs said the U.S. did it, and then some fat guy in a bow tie was like, "Well, how do you prove that?" And I was like, did none of them saw the clip of Biden saying we're going to do that?
Exactly.
No one saw the clip of Biden saying we're going to bomb the pipeline. Also, by the way, they had already shut it down. They had successfully shut it down. Germany wasn't going to use it anymore. It was completely just a dead pipeline at that point. It was full of Russian gas that the Germans had no intention of getting out of there. Again, another reason why they would want to vent it at sea.
Exactly.
Remember when Biden said they were going to bomb it? Oh, exactly. That is so exactly.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
So we had all these U.S. officials promising that they would stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
And they had. They had. The Germans had already agreed not to get any gas from it. They had agreed to all the sanctions. As a matter of fact, they got ahead of the game. They were actually stopping their reliance on Russian gas earlier. Everybody said that time. And remember, this was back when, like, oh my God, this will be over in 6 months and the Russians are probably going to win. So we'll shame them by getting everybody to start dialing stuff back. And then it continued on. Everybody's like, oh shit, they're going to kill every Ukrainian they can get anywhere near. So fuck them, we're going to stop. And they set a date and they started stockpiling gas. Remember that? Remember, oh my God, the price of gas is going to go up and Russia's going to freeze out Europe because when winter comes, they won't be able to afford gas and the people will rise up and be all mad. And they go, I don't care if you're slaughtering children. I don't care if you cut off a soldier's genitals live on camera. I don't care if your rape squads were sexually assaulting children and then throwing them alive into a mass grave. Look at my gas bill. Because that's progressive, right? That's the idea. Like, it's all about low labor costs, I suppose.
And yet, even when someone did stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and it got blown up, people didn't want to make the connection between what U.S. officials had promised and what had just happened. Well, Seymour Hersh has just given us the inside scoop.
Okay, give us the inside scoop, Seymour.
And this is what he reports. Last June, Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22.
Baltops 22. I gotta say, as military names, it's like in the world of like Agenda 21 and Jade Helm, which sounds like a boat run by that movie with the guy from CSI Miami. Did you ever guys watch Jade? Never mind. It's too big of a reach. I apologize.
Planted the remote
Baltops 22. Operation Teabag. Operation Nut Drop.
fully triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed.
3 months later. And in the 3 months, the Nord Stream. So let's take a look at this. The argument here about quality construction on behalf of the Russians. They were able to go down there and plant bombs And the sensors and cameras all along the pipeline did not detect them doing so, nor did they detect that they were there at any given point. These were... Hey, man, these guys are ball tops. What can I say?
3 of the 4.
Who's the door douchebag? Oh, this is Aaron Pate. Pat, we'll figure it out. No relation to DePap, but close. He and Max Blumenthal, I think, do Gray Zone or what have you. He's a tanky. I mean, in short order, we can dive into it later if you want to, but he's another one of these guys, like the millionaire Marxist Jimmy Dore, who he's sitting in for, who think that America is not only the primary evil in the world, but it materially creates all the conflict. That if America ceased to exist tomorrow, there'd be peace and sunshine and rainbows, and the commune would have started uninterrupted. But because the American war machine has an insatiable taste for blood and treasure, that anything we do, if we send foodstuffs and disaster relief to an African country, it's really so that we can throw their people in a wood chipper and steal their cobalt. There is no upside to anything we do. Baseline evil country since inception, throughout every military thing we've ever been engaged in, including World War II, was us just trying to do hegemony, imperialism, deep state establishment monstrosity throughout the world. It's terrible. It's awful. It's basically Auschwitz as a country turned inside out. So we're the camp guards and everyone in the world is in Auschwitz because of us. And he lives here and would never live anywhere else. Just like Jimmy Dore, not moving, not packing his shit and moving to China or Iran or Russia or Yemen, any of the countries that are trod upon by the United States. No. Not only lives in the United States, but in a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood up in the hills away from the riffraff. But, and again, this goes to the whole thing. Can you call the hunter a scumbag if you're living off the carcass? Especially if you're sitting there with a napkin tucked into your shirt, expecting the finest cut. Right? If you're asserting that this was a bad kill, that it's not, this is not someone eating beef or bison. This is, oh my God. All America does, the great hunter America, all it does is kill and make extinct all the finest animals in the world. Can I have a piece of the liver, though, while you're at it? Thank you very much. And it's just terrible, the destruction they wrought upon wantonly killing koalas and white tigers and white rhinos and white buffalo, all the white animals or whatever. Can I have a piece of white meat? Thank you very much. Yes, no, it is dark meat. Leave that for them. They live I live up in the hills. I would like yes, thank you. Piece of white meat. Thank you. And anyways, it's just disgusting. I hope you're proud of yourself. Like, at a certain point, again, this doesn't even fall into the America love it or leave it thing, because that kind of creates that kind of suggests there's a mitigatory way of feeling about America. You better love it all the way, or if you don't love it completely blindly, then get the fuck out. That's not even what I'm talking about. These guys, there's not even a scale of love. These motherfuckers hate this place. They hate everything the United States does, and yet they live on a pile of skulls, apparently, that America surreptitiously severs so that they can have a cushy spot at the top of the heap. That makes no fucking sense to me. Maybe one of them can explain it. Because again, they'll go, oh, America love it, live it. That's what they'll fall into. And I don't know for a fact that they've spent more than a week anywhere else in the world except for, cushy, warm vacation places, Caribbean, Acapulco, shit like that. I've traveled. I went to Phuket and right back. I've been to Dubai. I know what the Middle East is like. That kind of shit.
Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning.
A source, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. So a single-sourced story. This is why Seymour Hersh has this published on his Substack or wherever the fuck this is and not in a newspaper. Single source, one source. Now, think for a moment, is there anyone that is related to the U.S. military or somebody who might know tangentially somebody who's connected to that, Mike Flynn, that might just for political purposes or their own disgusting reasons pull this story out of their ass using something that's widely known and just use that as the way? Is can anybody, Mike Flynn, think of somebody along those lines? Anybody that, has, talks to somebody, that talked to somebody, Scott Ritter, that talked to somebody else that might be the source with direct knowledge of the operational planning.
So what Hersh is saying here is that the U.S. used the cover of a NATO naval exercise to send divers deep.
No. He's not saying that. He's saying one person he talked to said that to him, a source he is not naming and does not corroborate through other sources. He's not saying this. He's repeating this from a single unknown source.
Below sea in the Baltic and to plant these bombs. And 3
Well, they would kind of have to, because isn't that where the pipeline is?
out of 4 of them went off. The 4th one didn't. But that was enough to destroy the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. These 2 pipelines connecting Russia to Germany. See,
now I got to say, now I don't believe it's America at all. You fucked it up, Aaron Pate. You fucked it up. You fucked it up. If it was America that did it, all 4 bombs would have gone off. America doesn't make bombs that don't explode. Unless we, of course, want to leave unexploded ordnance behind. But, that's why we voted the Bushes out of office.
According to Hersh, Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back-and-forth debate inside Washington's national security community about how best to achieve that goal.
Well, they did a pretty good job. After all this, the only thing coming out that's news of it that seems to eat into the big mystery is one guy's single-sourced Substack story.
For much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible.
And mission accomplished, apparently, because again, a single source, like how many people believe that who would technically have could say, whether it's true or not, could say they have a operational awareness around something like this? Any number of Congress people who talk to military people who say that they heard what they said they heard. And by the way, he doesn't name his source as far as where they are along things, and I understand that to some degree, but at this point, it could have been Marjorie Taylor Greene. In a whispered, husky voice, standing behind a pillar in a parking lot, going, "Just follow the Jewish space lasers."
President Biden and his foreign policy team, Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, and Victoria Nuland, had been vocal and consistent in their hostility to the 2 pipelines, which...
No, they were not hostile to pipelines. They were hostile to Russia using oil and gas as a manipulation, as a wedge or a lever to manipulate Europe into slowing their role in protecting Ukraine from Russia's invasion. They weren't mad at the pipeline. And by the way, Seymour's a pro. Seymour Hersh he's been around for a long time. He knows the fucking difference between a leading sentence and facts. He knows the difference between me creating a narrative for you and you reading the facts that we know in front of us and interpreting them your own way. And hostility to the two pipelines is not about Russia and Ukraine and the attack that they're doing. This is to front load your brain to focus on America wants the gas business from Russia, of Europe. They're controlling Russia with gas. We want to control Russia with gas. By the way, something that we aren't fucking doing. The shift over for gas sources for Europe is, while the United States is presenting more and they're our like single biggest export customer, because we don't really export it much at all. We use it, we sell it in neighboring countries, but unless they're set up for LNG and are ready for it, there's no reason to think this is the business model that we need to get in, so we can start shipping liquefied natural gas over there so they can deliquefy it and use it. It's a big fucking pain in the ass. That's why there's pipelines everywhere. And the Netherlands and Norway and other countries can sell it to them just fine. We don't give a fuck. America is not chasing the natural gas market. It's a utility commodity. And we know it and everybody else knows it. The idea that we're going to this is finally, America makes all the highest level semiconductors in the world that run fucking everything of merit on the planet, but we're chasing, but without natural gas, whatever shall we, get the fuck out of here.
Transide.
But again, make no mistake, Seymour Hersh put that sentence in, this one right here. Their hostility to the two pipelines. To plant a thought in your head. That's a seed.
By side for 750 miles under the Baltic Sea from two different ports in northeastern Russia near the Estonian border.
Also, following up an assertion, an ideological assertion. I mean, this is like a masterclass in propaganda and bullshit. Congratulations, class, gather around. This is fascinating because I don't think I've seen a clearer version of it in my life. So, hostility to the two pipelines. Again, to make you think more about the gas trade and not hostility towards the Russian control over Europe that allows them to commit mass murder, right? They're not pissed about that. It's about the pipelines. This is to make you think it's monetary, and that's why they want to do it. And then follow it up with bullshit stats. Easily verifiable, obvious descriptives of the actual thing. Follow a bullshit assertment with sheer facts in the article. And again, if somebody's talking in conversation and they throw stuff up because back and forth, people are like, you don't know what you're talking about, and then you express the whole thing, that's one thing. But in an article, he's editing this himself. Seymour Hersh does not have, insofar as I know, have an editor that works with him. This is not a situation where you're posting something in the New York Times, you're writing an opinion piece, and the opinion editorial page sits down with you and goes, yeah, that doesn't make sense, and fix this little thing, and straighten this out, and it'll be clearer, and it's better for our readers, and it's more fluid, and you keep hammering this point, Ayn Rand, and it's the same bullshit over and over and over again, and it's tiresome. It'll give some of our readers a boner, but everybody else will think you're a dickhead, and so they'll cut stuff out and stuff. He's not doing that. Seymour Hersh edited this himself, if at all. He wrote this as he wanted it written. So you can pay extra attention to it more so than you can even a series of articles.
Passing close to the Danish island of Bornholm before ending in northern Germany.
Yes, it did end in northern Germany before it was blown up. It was ended.
The direct route, which bypassed any need to transit Ukraine, had been a boon for the German economy, which...
no. It'd been primarily a boon for the Kremlin to control Europe through Germany. The cheaper gas was an ancillary effect of that control. There's a different, I'll give you an example as best I can. There's a difference between someone selling heroin to someone at market price because they know that person can afford it, and that person paying whatever the heroin dealer is selling it for and using it themselves. There's another thing to sell it on the cheap in exchange for favors and get the person hooked on it, and eliminating any other source, by the way, which is what Mate and I guess tacitly Herscher's asserting the U.S. is doing, even though, again, we're not the primary source of natural gas, nor shall we be for Europe. That the Russians are effectively saying, I'll give you this heroin on the cheap. In a, first one's free, get you hooked, and then wake up the next day and suddenly you have a pimp. That's the Russian plan in this situation.
Which enjoyed an abundance of cheap Russian natural gas.
Yes, cheap if human life means nothing to you. Very cheap. If your definition of worth in the world is only monetary exchange, and not things like, dear God, Russian oligarchs and their murderous compatriots in the Wagner Group are going to wipe out the Ukrainian people and brag about it on television that they're doing it, film themselves, committing atrocities happily, not stuff sneaking out, not stuff like Abu Ghraib and stuff where the country sees it and is ashamed, but in this case, like, nice work. Yeah, those folks. Yeah, that's if you don't give a shit about that. Anyways, yeah, cheap gas.
Enough to run its factories and heat its homes while enabling German distributors to sell excess gas at a profit throughout Western Europe.
Uh-huh. So again, the heroin analogy. I give you heroin, get you hooked on it, and then you become a distributor for me. And at one point, because you're undercutting the rest of the market, Netherlands, Norway, other countries have a problem with, because I'm selling it to you cheap, so you can sell the excess at a mild profit, but you don't have to produce it like Norway or Netherlands or any of these other countries do. So it's all profit. That's shaved profit. You're just selling your excess that you're getting from me. This is, if you look at fossil fuels as fentanyl, this makes way more fucking sense.
Action that can be traced to the administration would violate U.S. promises to minimize direct conflict with Russia. Secrecy was essential.
Yes, it's chapter 5. Glub, glub, glub.
From its earliest days, Nord Stream 1 was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners.
Okay, there you go. So, again, there's a thought plant. That's a seed right there. From this point forward, if you don't already, you're supposed to think of NATO as anti-Russian, and that everybody in NATO is anti-Russian, not concerned about Russian. Like, the idea is that victims advocates groups for sexual assault victims are anti men, right? That's a right-wing talking point. Like, anybody who, comes out in the Me Too movement, anybody who's trying to help victims be believed and help put men who do this kind of shit, and women, I suppose, too, behind bars for doing this stuff. It's not that they're advocating for the victims. They are, for all practical purposes, just anti-men. Right? You've heard that talking point on the right. This is the same thing. Anti-Russian NATO partners. That anti-Russian is an assertion of value put in by Seymour Hersh it's to put a hook in your nose. Just I read the whole article, so he's going to go, there's a bunch of these in there. But they are it's something that, like, you guys know I love me some Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! I feel like in a couple areas she's gone astray every so often. But Juan Gonzalez, for some reason, is all in on some of this shit in a very odd way. And it seems relatively new over the last few years. And he'll ask some leading questions when he's got guests on where I'm like, okay, you're going to assign an answer to this before you've even asked. And I expect that in what would effectively be, quote unquote, corporate media or the mainstream media, because they got, short amount of time and they got to sell toilet paper and fucking catheters and all that kind of shit. So they got to get the, I'm leading you into this because we want to get the story as concisely for our viewers as possible so we can move on. Democracy Now! Doesn't have that problem. So they can hang on a story as long as they fucking want, and their viewers, listeners will pay attention. So it's weird when Juan Gonzalez tips these things in a very, you know, in a curious direction, much like what Hirsch is doing here. He tends to do this a lot. It's, I remember being like about a year and a half ago, just shocked repeatedly when I would listen to Democracy Now! Or see their report on YouTube, because I'll watch their opening report pretty regularly to see where they're, you know, what's on their radar. And like I said, love Amy Goodman and her work in East Timor. Like, I give her a lot of credit for that. That said, there's definitely a lot of, you know, seeds and hooks in what Juan and some of the other reporters are doing. This is the same thing. Seymour Hersh is doing the exact same fucking thing. Anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance. Okay, what does that mean? What does a threat to Western dominance mean? Dominance in what? The gas trade? America's cool with, like, just effectively throwing it all away, triggering World War III to expand natural gas trade to what? The craters of Berlin after World War III starts? It's fucking dumb. Secondly, part of this is because everybody was expecting this to trigger World War III and it didn't. So everybody's like, can somebody write an article, please, that we can blame the U.S. again and say, now we're back on the, we're move the doomsday clock closer. It's the same shit.
As a threat to Western dominance.
Again, Western dominance of what? The rule of law, democracy? What kind of Western dominance are we talking about? Because again, Western dominance in the natural gas trade, because that's what he's asserting. That's what you would logically pull from this. But if you're Mate and you're coke grinding like he is, and you're Kurt Metzger and other sponge-headed fucks that read this and want to believe ahead of time, so they hunt down articles for confirmation bias. This is like, finally, a threat to Western dominance is not about one particular industry. It is about the nature of Western society, culture, and existence at all. Again, it is America, the big bad guy, Europe full of even worse bad guys, and Russia as a victim.
As long as Europe remained dependent on the pipelines for cheap natural gas, Washington was afraid that countries like Germany would be reluctant to supply Ukraine with the money and weapons it needed to defeat Russia.
Right. Yeah, this we know. But again, we've already asserted 3 times in this article so far that they want to defeat Russia not because of what Russia is doing to Ukraine right now, but because they're anti-Russian. They didn't even have to invade Ukraine at this point. This is actually great in terms, folks, of our third paragraph rule in any story. This entire Seymour Hersh article skips the third paragraph.
This is a key point. So if you're going to wage a proxy war against Russia and Ukraine, you need your European allies on board, especially Germany, because Germany is the economic center of Europe.
Again, if we were going to wage a proxy war, we're instigating and waging a proxy war. The argument would be Biden comes in, immediately starts paperwork on making Ukraine a member of NATO. Russia reacts, boom. There you have a conversation. The conversation about the possibility of Ukraine entering NATO was 8 fucking years ago. It did not start again until after Russia attacked. And the 8-year-ago conversation about them joining NATO was because 4 years prior, Russia had taken 1/5 of their fucking country. In the same way that it had done it to Georgia, and the same way it had done to Chechnya, the same way it was setting up puppet governments in Dagestan and Kazakhstan. The murder creep that Russia does in all of its military actions were the reason why Ukraine was like, fuck, we may have to join NATO at some point. But, by the way, there was still enough Russian puppets in the country undermining all the systems of government and a lot of the industry in there that there was no way that they could that NATO would welcome them in until it was stabilized. So it went on the back burner. Discussed and the world moved on. But suddenly, in fucking February of 21, Russia decides an 8-year-old conversation about the possibility of Ukraine becoming a member of NATO at some point, maybe, possibly, but probably not. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons why you would attack and have a border dispute, because you can't actually join NATO while you're in the midst of a border dispute. So it just makes it easy. Like Moldova can't join because Russia's seized a chunk of its border. And as long as they're there fucking around, unresolved, they can't join. That's reason enough for Russia to just creep through Ukraine, for example, take a piece of, near Poland, right, of Ukraine, and go, we think that part of Poland is ours. Therefore, NATO, you're either all in and you're stealing land from us, or, they're in a border dispute and Poland has to drop out of NATO until they resolve it with us.
Europe. And the U.S. needs Germany on board to send weapons.
Yeah, that's why. We need Germany on board to send weapons. No, we don't. We can send weapons all our own, but cohesion in NATO is crucial in dealing with Russia at the scale that they're threatening attack. And by the way, there's a reason why Russia repeatedly invokes Berlin as a place they're going to nuke. Because, again, this is like, to go back to the heroin pimp analogy, if you can't lure them with drugs, you beat the fuck out of them. Threaten them with a beating that will end their life. Get them back in line. It is the Russian form of bitch better have my money.
Close by to Ukraine. But if Germany is receiving cheap Russian gas.
And again, cheap if you don't value human life. And Mate does not. Matt, Aaron Pate. Aaron Pate, that's what we're going to call him from now on. Aaron Pate, Kurt Metzger, if you don't value human life, Russian gas is cheap. I'll give you that. If you don't give a fuck about Wagner rape squads, if you don't give a fuck about strafe bombing and the theft of not just Ukraine, Georgia, Chechnya, all the actions that they've taken, if you don't care about those things, yeah, it's cheap gas. If you factor that price in, what's the cost of Russian gas? Is it still cheap? I mean, America on a certain level is dealing with this with consumer goods in the United States. Do you want cheap garments that you get via Xinjiang slave labor, Uyghurs being forced into slave labor, sterilized, murdered, re-educated, and then put into work camps to pick fucking cotton so that you can have yet another t-shirt you'll go, and put away? Or do you want to pay $11 for a shirt instead of $8? So that you don't think of it as an abolitionist tax, kids. God, things are slightly more expensive. Yes, in cash, but not in human life. Excellent point. Nobody fucking factors that in. It's like fucking oil and gas in this country. You don't actually think what you pay at the pump is the actual price of the pump, do you? The government subsidizes, even when it taxes parts of the gas that you get, to keep the price low, and has for decades as a lubricant for the economy. And it worked. Other countries are trying it. China is, in many ways, was price fixing the gas with inside the country for a long time. It's just so much graft fucked with the whole thing, and they can't. The provincial governors and everywhere, provincial governors everywhere, were taking their slice, so it doesn't quite work out the way they want it to, and nobody complains because they're afraid that because they don't know who they're talking to, whether they're gonna get busted for. The local guy will kick your ass like a mafia boss if you try to find a chain up behind him, right?
Powering its economy, then it has an incentive to minimize conflict with Russia and not.
No. What they're hoping is that the threat of Russia freezing Germans to death in their beds over a harsh winter would be, or the actual action of doing it would be enough to keep them from supporting Ukraine. Again, these guys are the example of the old Carlin line, do what you want with the girl, but leave me alone.
Engage in a proxy war with it.
And by the way, Larry, thank you so much. Hail to Hal and team. Most enjoyable analysis and chat on the web. Oh, thank you so much. Melissa, thank you so much. Roderick, thanks a lot for the super chat. I'm afraid to scroll through my software and Tony from Ireland, thank you for the gifted subs. That's lovely. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you for your support. Thanks for liking this show and subscribing, all the things that I keep asking people to do. You know who you are. You're sitting in the back. You're like, I could click subscribe, but fuck this guy. Welcome to the show. How are you? Good to see you. All right, now, I mean, this is, I hope this isn't too deep reads for everybody. I'll go another minute on this because he's not going anywhere with it. He'll cut to Kurt in a minute because he's got probably a little marker like, go to Kurt every 2.5 minutes in the clip so he can go,
So the U.S. solved that problem by blowing up this pipeline. And here's more from Hirsch. In December of 2021, 2 months before the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, Jake Sullivan convened a meeting of a newly formed task force. What became clear to participants, according to the source with direct knowledge of the process, is that Sullivan intended for the group to come up with a plan for the destruction of the 2 Nord Stream pipelines, and that he was...
Hi. Yeah. What's that? Aw. Should I open it on the... Huh? Aw. Love you. My girlfriend got me yeah, and we interrupt this program to bring you a Valentine's Day gift, belated because the mail was slow, as it was. That came. This is lovely. I like it. It's very oh look, and it's Ukrainian. Yeah, it's got a Ukrainian piece of artwork on the top of it. How appropriate to considering our conversation right now, if I do say so my damn self. We'll use this later. It's just like cat string for. It's very Christmassy. I think it's the red and white peppermint. That's good or whatever. And we'll look inside here. That's good. Aw. Aw. That's so cute. I don't know what the little baubles in it. That concerns me. I don't know that. It's mesmerizing. There's little beads in the box that if you stare too long, it draws you in. This is the kind of, this is how you know you're a nerd and your nerd loves you. It's a little Iron Man, and in a little bottle it says, I love you 3000. Excuse me. Love you. Sorry, my hands are cold. And love, life's sweetest reward. Sorry. Hi. Aw. See, now I get this look at. I put this on my desk, and then that's what I'm looking at all the time when I'm doing my show. You know, just a little sign of beauty, the beauty of humanity. All right, back to the bile. Whew. All right. Wish me luck. So, derp. Hi, I'm Aaron Pate. Derp. Seymour said the thing that helps my confirmation bias. I feel so much better. The facts and logic don't line up, but so what? I don't care. What's important to me is America bad, while I warm my hands on the fire that it creates, on the corpses of the innocent, and eat the white meat from the kill that it brings down with its arrows. On a tiny little fork on the warm side of a bay window, as I live and participate in a septic monster. I live in the shadow of a monster, but I guess, what choice do I have? Num num num. Num num num.
Was delivering on the.
This is, by the way, from now on in the show. Num 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 is going to be our little inside joke, I think, for these fuckers. These, like, remember that scene in The Revenant where he climbs inside the horse's corpse after it falls off the hill? He rides the horse off the hill. It falls through the tree and that kind of stuff, and then it's freezing, and his horse is dead, so he just slits its belly like a tauntaun and crawls inside of it, you know? It's like, if Aaron Mate was in that, he'd, like, squeeze himself in and go, stupid fucking horse.
The desires of the president.
And the president said this.
I don't know what kind of 1930s character Kurt is always doing, or if it's a breathing problem. He said they're gonna end it. They did end it. It was already ended. That's why blowing it up made no sense. The Germans were already offline with it. It was done. Russia doesn't even have the people to run the fucking facility to pump the gas anymore.
I don't understand why this is such a drawn out. Biden straight up said we're going to do it. So how?
No, he didn't. He did not straight up say we're going to do it. He said we'll end it. It will come to an end, because he believed, by the way, that the Germans would come around, that they would not be as bloodthirsty and disgusting as Kurt and Aaron and Jimmy. Biden tends to think, and you can listen to him talk about people like Mitch McConnell and others, he's still, you know, and you can call him naive or Pollyannish about this shit, but he still insists on seeing the logic and humanity in some people that are fairly fucked. I mean, there's certainly times, like, he obviously thinks, you know, Peter Ducey and you know, MTG and that crowd and Boebert, they're fucking morons. But the people he's worked with before, who's like, all right, they're assholes sometimes, but we can talk sense into them at some point. He still believes that, and I think he believed that about Germany. Like, they're going to come in line. They're listening to us. We'll make it happen. Don't worry. You know, and by the way, when he says, I don't want, you know, like, how would you do that? He's like, we'll be able to do it. Just talking openly about the economic pressure they would put on Germany. Like, if he just said at that moment, we'll have to sanction German cars in the United States. How do you think that would have been received? Because that's one of them. I mean, Trump did it with Mexican cars, right? American cars built in Mexico, which is why it never fucking happened. Remember that, though? We're going to put a tax on everything that's built in your country. 25% tax. And they came in line. Oh, we'd be glad to take your fucking fentanyl-laced, more murderous, crazy people, or whatever the fuck. Same thing with Germany. We have multiple ways of putting pressure on Germany as an outlier. Maybe not Hungary, because honest to God, bless their hearts. And you know, one of my exes is from Hungary, and the tales she has told over the years, her brother did a remix of one of my songs. And I remember hearing it going, this kid is super talented and it's amazing and beautiful. And I was so honored that he did it. And there's a glass ceiling over his fucking head because he lives in Hungary. Unless he gets out of Hungary, he's got no career in music this way. If he moves to Spain or he moves to any other place, even in you know, other Eastern European countries, he might have a shot. Not Hungary. I forget her chances, like women's chances in Hungary. Holy shit.
How is it any kind of mystery? Like, how does he even get to Seymour Hersh as to write?
Because you're an idiot and he's an idiot, and Seymour Hersh is using a single source to try and push this narrative, because Seymour Hersh is of the mindset that mutual assured destruction. He's one of the primary targets of the Russian strategy of mutual assured destruction as an umbrella under which you can attack anyone. I can attack anybody because I will shoot. I'm crazy enough. You may have a gun and I have a gun, but you're not going to stop me from assaulting these people because you don't want to shoot. I don't give a fuck. That's what the Russians have used mutual assured destruction especially since the fall of the USSR. That's been the purpose of it. Even the fear of rogue nukes. We might just turn our back. I don't know who's going to come get this. You know, some people might walk right up there and take some shit. So you better kiss our ass for a while. They did that all during Clinton. They did that all during Bush 1. Remember all the stories about rogue nukes getting out of Russia because there was no fucking lock on the door? That there were like these fucking shacks out in the middle of Siberia that had a nuke in them? And we were like, fuck, they're not doing anything to protect. Well, we can't afford it. You guys got to give us some money so that we can, we can put a lock on the door. We can, then we can hire some people to stand around in the snow and make sure that, nobody from Al-Qaeda comes and gets one of our nukes, which we told them where it was. Remember that? That was multiple times we went through that shit with them. By the way, did the money go to stop that? And anyway, is there anybody ever see any measurable response where the money we gave them for that ever went to that? Of course not. We just all assumed that's what that had to be done, and we were doing it. And then you find out that the people who were in charge of it, who were, put on task, were people like Scott Ritter, convicted child sex offender, Scott Ritter, who spent a good old time in Russia during that period where the U.S. is paying people to live in Russia essentially and look for, and make sure that the nukes don't slip out while they're all being crafted to basically be turned into propaganda missiles used later on.
Right, something.
Well, someone described Hersh as someone who is a master at deconstructing the obvious.
I would say in this, I don't know that that's the case. In this particular case, it reads like propaganda. And that's not even opinion. We've looked at it. Materially, that's how propaganda functions. We saw multiple sentences in there that are meant to be hooks and other ones that are supposed to weight the argument.
Because our media works so hard to deny the obvious. So we need someone like Cy Hersh who has the sources on the inside to come along and tell.
Sources. That was a nice slip. Has sources. Suddenly there's this person has a split personality.
That's the story.
And both personalities know equal levels of intelligence, I suppose.
And he reveals it. And that date there of December 2021, when the planning gets underway, that's interesting because that's the same month that Russia presented the U.S. and NATO with really detailed draft treaties to resolve its concerns about Ukraine and NATO. The main ask from Russia was that Ukraine commit to not join NATO, and also that NATO roll back its military infrastructure and troops in certain states surrounding Russia, just the states that joined NATO after 1997. Not all states around Russia.
By the way, why 1997, Aaron? Why 1997? Why does Russia think that they have a fucking say in 1997? And why, Russian. If this motherfucker, let's, all right. 1997. Hold on. 1 second. Let me close this. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Founding Act. 27th of May, 1997 was when this came out, ladies and gentlemen. On mutual relations, cooperation, and security between NATO and the Russian Federation, signed in Paris, France. Signed by both parties. Sat in agreement, talked about it for weeks, came up with a paper, argued principles, and in and amongst those things that Russia agreed to in 1997, NATO and Russia will base their relations on a shared commitment to the following principles: development on the basis of transparency, strong, stable, enduring, and equal partnership and cooperation of strength, security, and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. This is when they thought they were actually going to bring Russia into NATO to counter like rogue Middle Eastern states and China. Acknowledgement of the vital role that democracy, political pluralism, the rule of law, and respect for human rights and civil liberties in the development of a free market economy play in the development of a common prosperity and comprehensive security. Besides the fact that, yeah, well, outside the country, sure, but we still steal from our own people, right? Yeah. Refraining from the threat or use of force against each other as well as against any other state, its sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence in any manner inconsistent with the United Nations Charter and the Declaration of Principles guiding relations between participating states contained in the Helsinki Final Act. So, just for anybody keeping score, the Russian attack on Crimea and the Donbass, crossing that border, an established border for years, and seizing territory and doing the same thing. By the way, they attacked Georgia, Chechnya after all this too. Again, this is how you know that the intention all along was for Russia to use mutual assured destruction to shield themselves from everything else they want to do under a certain threshold of war. This is the part that these fuckers, including Aaron Mate, always leave out. Right here. This is the big one. I want everybody to pay real close fucking attention to this one. This one right here. Respect for sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of all states. Ukraine existed as a state at that point, just for the record. And their inherent right, so did Georgia and Chechnya and Kazakhstan and Dagestan and all, yeah, okay. And their inherent right to choose the means to ensure their own security. The inviolability of borders and people's right of self-determination as enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act and other OSCE documents. This says, if you want to join NATO, you can join NATO. If you don't want to join NATO, you don't have to join NATO. And nobody else has a fucking say. We don't force anybody to join, and you don't stop anybody from joining. The same thing with your own, you know, his grouping around the stands, the former Russian republics. If they want to form a security alliance, have at it. You can't do it by coercion or force, but if they want to join, you have an election and the leader's popular for a while and he goes, I think we need to join in this. Knock yourself the fuck out. This is 1997. Do you think, by the way, and I think this, at this point, I genuinely don't know if Pate, I know Kurt Metzger doesn't fucking know about the 97 NATO-Russian Founding Act. Right? I mean, maybe he was high when he read it.
But just certain states. Those were Russia's two main demands. And
yeah, you don't get to do that. They signed a treaty with NATO, a founding agreement, a baseline for all interaction that said, yeah, you can do what you want. And NATO's like, yeah, actually, we're interested in you joining us in case China eventually tries to take, Mongolia and then parts of Eastern Russia from you guys. And, if you want to operate like a real country and not be just an island of Dr. Evils, we're fine with that now.
And the U.S., instead of taking up that offer from Russia and trying to negotiate.
By the way, the U.S. not taking up the offer of slicing up another country. Now, again, imagine this is Palestine. Imagine there was, at some point, there was Israel Falls. This is, follow me on this. Israel Falls as a country. The government, is in trouble right now. The judiciary shit that's going on. Netanyahu is monkeying around in the system there. And he manages to collapse the fucking government. And so much so that they have to go back to a baseline of establishing where their rule of law comes from. And their constitution is basically torn up and they start from scratch on a particular day. Well, the minute that happens, the Palestinians go, all right, fuck this. This is our country. Starting at this line. We're not moving in there, but we're not moving out. This is Palestine now. This isn't Palestinian territories because you can't have a territory if you're not a functioning country anymore. Fuck you. We're us. Buzz off. And then, 20 years later, the Palestinians are trading with their Middle East partners. They're not engaged in war of any kind with Israel at that point. Let's say 12, 20, let's say 13 years later, down the line, that would put us at about the 2014 invasion. Palestine decides we're going to be more in line with the other Middle Eastern countries. We're not engaging in any war, but in trade. And Israel just decides to invade a third of the now Palestine as a country. Is Pate and fucking Kurt Metzger gonna say that the U.S. should have negotiated with Israel to just let them keep a third of Palestine, this newly formed country that had been functioning, growing, separating itself from the corruption and violence in its past and turning it over a new leaf, that in the process of doing that, if Israel had decided, fuck that, we're not going to let them get up on their legs, we're going to kneecap them before it fucking happens, does the United States have and NATO or fuck our relationship, well, let's go with our relationship with the Saudis, that would be the closest thing as far as a military alliance that could have some weight, could put a thumb on the scale in this situation. Would Pate and any of these tanky fuckheads say that the United States and Saudi Arabia should have taken that deal and given a third of Palestine to Israel after they had seized it illegally? After, by the way, Israel had, 10 years after, had come to an agreement with with the OPEC countries or the military alliance of Saudi Arabia and the United States, and they all sat down and they said, okay, Palestine's a real country now, right? We're good? Okay, cool. If Palestine wants to do business with them, they can do business with them? Yes. If Palestine doesn't want to do business with them, they don't have to? No, they don't. They're their own country. We agree on sovereignty. We understand. Yes. Everybody's signing? Yes, we're good. And then 12 years later, you're like, we're going to nuke anybody if you don't let us murder everybody in the entire country. That's the standard they're arguing for. And I've already shown you. This is not, I didn't type this up. This isn't me one sourcing this shit. This isn't like, by the way, a source close to NATO said that this kind of agreement was whispered about. Fuck you. Russia and NATO signed on to this in 1997. And a principal part of it was, if people want to join NATO, they can join NATO. You got nothing to fear from us as long as you're not fucking with us. You're good. We have no interest in just nuking or bombing Russia for no particular fucking reason. It makes no sense. Unless Russia the entire time is lying when they're signing that they never meant to keep up their side of this contract. In which case they started subverting everybody involved from the beginning. And again, who invaded who? Did Georgia invade Russia? Did Chechnya invade Russia? Did Ukraine invade Russia? Did Norway or Finland, for fuck's sake? Did any NATO country invade them? And again, the argument is that Russia says that if you put missile defense systems, anti-ballistic missile systems on their border, which would, by the way, nullify the mutual affected part of the destruction, because if it would stop a Russian first strike, which seems to be their only leverage in all these situations that they go to again and again. If you don't let me murder these people, I'll fucking nuke your town. And they've done that multiple fucking times. Sources. You know who my source is? The Russian government who signed on to this in 1997, when apparently Pate thinks that maybe this is their version of the Minsk agreement, that Russia had no choice and there was a gun to their head.
Taking those proposals seriously and trying to resolve a crisis that was then growing over Ukraine.
What was it, a crisis? Why was it a crisis? Was it a crisis because Ukrainians attacked Russia? They kept moving like weapons close to the Russian border and were firing into Russia because they were mad about shit that happened during the czars? again, this is like somebody defending someone in court who played the knockout game and killed an elderly man, that it was because the elderly man, you know, they didn't feel like they belonged in the neighborhood because they were Asian or whatever. And so, you know, it was a reaction, but it was a natural reaction.
Instead rejected the Russian offer, and instead...
By the way, the Russian offer was, we keep what we stole. Also, we keep what we stole after we agreed not to steal anything. Can we have another agreement that puts you on pause, but I can do whatever the fuck I want? I mean, the amount of fucking ignorance in this. And Pate, you should be looking at me like that because I'm teabagging your bullshit argument. We've heard this so many fucking times. The Hearst thing is embarrassing. We're halfway through this and they have not gotten anywhere.
Started planning to blow up the Nord Stream 2, which they...
Yeah, yes. Yeah, they started just planning to destroy it. Now, planning to stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from going online and making Germany even more reliant on Russian gas. Yeah, they were trying to figure out a bunch of ways to do it. And I don't doubt that they floated everything, including blowing it up. I'm sure that at that all hands on deck, what's feasible, what's possible, what's smart, and what's logical, everything was on the table. And then they started eliminating things. We don't need that. We don't need to go there yet. We don't need to go there yet. And the bombing of the fucking thing, if it was, well, when Russia blew up their own fucking pipeline, it was after the Germans had already agreed not to use it. It was dead, no pun, in the water.
They knew was a major off-ramp to peace because...
Yeah, that was. We just wanted to fight peace. That's what America is just. Why won't we let there just be peace? Why can't we trust Skeksis want peace?
Germany, if hell. Germany was receiving Russian gas, then Germany would maybe be inclined to accept a peace deal with Russia.
It's not their peace deal to accept, fuckhead. It's not. It isn't their goddamn country. And by the way, they have a stake in Ukraine not becoming stable and strong, because right now Germany is the dominating European country because it has the largest economy. You know, one of the reasons why it has it is because it's been living off the tit of Russian energy for so long and reselling it to other countries because it doesn't have to produce any of its own. It gives it a leg up on its European partners that produce natural gas, and Russia is literally giving them special service for the purpose of strategically controlling them. Like, this is, honestly, the childishness of this, the idea that Germany wants to be a giant fucking hippie, but America the brute won't let them. Think about that for a fucking second. That's the essence of this argument.
And Hirsch goes on, throughout all this scheming, the source said, some working guys in the CIA and the State Department were saying, don't do this. It's stupid and will be a political nightmare if it comes out.
Right, because everything is on the table. And during that conversation, like I said, people are going to go, that's dumb, that won't work. This will work. This is complicated. There's too much blowback from this. That's what strategy meetings are like. Again, this goes to our whole thing about, like, if you hacked into the DOD, there is probably a plan in there on how the United States could nuke Guam if a separatist group takes over the island and seizes military hardware and fires it on Japan. There's probably a paper in there somewhere. Some, like, low-level DOD, and I see you. Thanks for watching. I know you're bored. You're sitting at your desk and you think I'm charming, and you're right. It was assigned a fucking paper they had to write that was like, okay, Thompson, draft us up something on Guam. What? All right, there's 3 possible strategies. If it goes rogue, if it's a natural disaster, or if somebody takes it over and seizes military equipment and attempts to use it. Why? Because we need to have contingencies on point in case stuff happens in an emergency, and it's got to always be updated because it's a big, messy world. Get to typing and thinking.
Nevertheless, in early 2022, the CIA working group reported back to Sullivan's interagency group, we have a way to blow up the pipelines.
Yes, we're going to, just like we tricked Russia into attacking Ukraine, we're going to trick them into putting a pig in there with explosives, and they're going to blow it. Well, they're going to think they blew it up. We gotta.
So mission accomplished, and they did.
Will it be a political nightmare? It looks like nothing's going to happen to me.
No, it's not. Even though, as you said, Kurt, everyone.
By the way, they hate Victoria Nuland because they think she's responsible for deposing Yanukovych.
Admitted to having the motive. So this is back in January 2022. Victoria Nuland, top U.S. official, who Cy Hirsch says was involved in the planning in this. This is what she said.
Well, isn't she involved in all the planning on everything?
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Yeah, I mean, that means they bombed it. I mean, the idea, obviously, we're not going to sanction German cars. Look at like he's learning the Jimmy Dore face. I guess that's necessary. Maybe it's written on the paper. Does Kurt write down do the big, there it is, face? One way or another. One way or another. There, again, if we have to sanction Germany, we will. If we have to threaten, Germany with a loss of American support on a myriad of issues, we will do that. We're not going to say it right now because we don't want the Germans to freak the fuck out in public, but we need their leaders to know what we're talking about. Also, it had already ended before it was blown up. The Germans had already agreed never to take gas from it.
So that's Nuland making that promise that Nord Stream 2, one way or another, will not move forward. And now we know what she was talking about.
Yeah, she was talking about really bad sanctions and a big pissing match with Germany at the expense of European cohesion.
One of those ways was a bombing, right? And here's more. Here's Biden in February 2022.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
By the way, we had already denied any company the ability to get insurance through any American-related insurance company or financial institution in the building or servicing of or providing of parts for the Nord Stream pipeline. We'd already done that, which means if it blows up on its own or it starts leaking or whatever, you have to pay out of pocket. So everybody, and it's one of the reasons, by the way, why Germany eventually shut it down, was because they would be on the hook for any environmental damage or physical damage or the repairs necessary for it, that they'd either have to expect Russia to automatically do it and not charge them, which again makes that cheap gas a lot less cheap all of a sudden, or they'd have to pay for it themselves, which again would come out of their budget and be a shock to the people that are there, like, hey, why are we taking this fucking gas from these folks when we can get it from Norway or the Netherlands or set up a pipeline with them? We're setting up this one with Russia. Why is that? And everybody's like, well, because they sell us excess so we can sell it to the rest of Europe at a profit, and we get a little kick of something.
How will you do that?
Yeah, first of all, why would he tell you?
Exactly. Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Look at this, these fuckers. Oh my God. Yeah, obviously Germany doesn't care about money. Germany is just a hippie, peace-loving country. And the only way you're going to stop it is by blowing it up.
But prove it, though, Aaron.
Yes, prove it. Prove it. Again, it was already shut down. Hold on. Germany Anybody remember what happened in February of last year? Me neither. Remember what Biden said and what Victoria Nuland said? If Russia invades Ukraine, real easy. Russia didn't have to invade Ukraine, right? If Russia invades Ukraine, the Nord Stream 2 won't go forward. Gee, when was this? February 22nd, 2022. Germany freezes Nord Stream 2 gas project as Ukraine crisis deepens. Berlin. Germany on Tuesday halted the Nord Stream 2 Baltic Sea gas pipeline project designed to double the flow of Russian gas direct to Germany after Russia formally recognized 2 breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine. Europe's most divisive energy project, worth $11 billion, was finished in September, but has stood idle pending certification by Germany and the European Union. By the way, they were not going to get, sorry, let me scroll this down. They were not going to get certification from the EU after Russia invaded. Even if Germany was like, we're going to use it, then the European Union's going, okay, well then we're going to put a tax on everything under EU rules. You could break away and have your own, Grexit. We'll call it Grexit. The Germany's, they could have left like the Brits did. And maybe that was part of, Russia thought that that'd be another wedge. They could slice off another chunk of the EU that way. But the EU wouldn't sign off on the ability to use it, and they had to. The pipeline had been set to ease the pressure on European consumers facing record energy prices amid a wider post-pandemic cost of living crisis, because everybody was going back to doing shit again. And on governments that, and by the way, those same costs had cratered during the pandemic, but nobody's weighing it against where it was. It's always about year over year. Remember when we were having the year over year conversation? Fucking hell. Already forked out billions of dollars to try and cushion the impact on consumers. But on Tuesday, the European benchmark gas price, currently the Dutch mark contract, was up 9.8% to 78.95 euros per megawatt hour at 1607 general mean time, which, much like the price for the fourth quarter when Nord Stream 2 had been expected to start. Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president and now deputy chairman of its Security Council, tried to rub salt in the wound. Welcome to the new world where Europeans will soon have to pay 2,000 euros per 1,000 cubic meters, he tweeted, suggesting prices were set to double. Narrator. As it turns out, they didn't. President Vladimir Putin did pledge, however, that Russia would not interrupt any of its existing gas supplies. The Kremlin hoped the delay of Nord Stream 2 would be temporary, Interfax news agency reported, citing Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Germany gets half its gas from Russia and argued that Nord Stream 2 was primarily a commercial project to diversify energy supplies for Europe. But despite the potential benefits, the pipeline had faced opposition within the European Union and from the United States on the grounds that it would increase Europe's energy dependence on Russia, as well as denying transit fees to Ukraine, host to another Russian gas pipeline, and making it more vulnerable to Russian invasion. This is a huge change for German foreign policy with massive implications for energy security and Berlin's broader position towards Moscow, said Marcel Dursus, non-resident fellow at Kiel University's Institute for Security Policy. It suggests that Germany is actually serious about imposing tough costs on Russia. True leadership. Washington welcomed Scholz's announcement, saying it had been in close consultation with the German government overnight. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba tweeted his approval. This is a morally, politically, and practically correct step in the current circumstances. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said he had asked the economy ministry to make sure certification could not take place now. Yeah. Make sure. This is, here you go, scroll this down. There you go. This is before it blew, this is a long time before it blew up. Again, Russia blew up the pipeline to vent the pressurized gas in it into international waters because they don't give a fuck about the environment and they don't have the staff or facility at their gas pipeline facility where at the beginning of the fucking thing to vent it safely or put the gas anywhere else. So fuck it. And then they patched it and then refilled it with air. Not gas, air. They repressurized it with air. It's a fucking balloon now. The appropriate departments will make a new assessment of the security of our supply in light of what has changed in the last few days. The Russian state-owned gas giant Gazprom, which interestingly enough, who worked for Gazprom? Anybody know who worked for Gazprom? Carter Page. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It was, remember Carter Page? He was George Santos 1.0. OMV said it did not currently see a need to write downs for Nord Stream 2 and had already started receiving a return on its financing. Federal Network Agency, this is where we go. Sorry. Austria's OMV, France's NG, and Germany's Uniper and Wintershall DEA. Because Russia had half the cost and the other half went to Shell, Austria, France, and Germany. So not 100% Germany's cost and win. And by the way, France in this particular case, and Austria and the rest of Europe, I suppose, was expecting a lower price gas coming through this for their own countries. Both of them are saying fuck that and are on board with supporting Ukraine. And Shell certainly isn't going to do it because I mean it's a U.S. company, so they'll get fucked into a cocked hat.
And here is
this is like if OJ Simpson's "If I Did It" book.
Exactly.
No. It would be if you took OJ's divorce and without evidence, without the glove, without the trial, without any of it, that if you looked through his divorce proceedings and you looked at what Nicole said about him and asserted without evidence that someone in the police department who saw the parts of the divorce proceedings that the judge said would not be seen, could not be shown to the public, that a friend of yours in the police department said, he said he was going to murder her in front of her house with a big knife as soon as her boyfriend came by to drop off a pair of glasses. Like that's what it is. This is not, there's no bloody glove. There's no, if the bomb doesn't fit, you must acquit.
And here is
the fun we have
is just to put the icing on top. Here is Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, right after Nord Stream 2 was bombed in September of 2022. This is what Blinken said about it.
Ultimately, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy, and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant, and that offers tremendous strategic opportunity for the years to come. But meanwhile, we're determined to do everything we possibly can to make sure that the consequences of all of this are not borne by citizens in our countries, or for that matter, around the world.
And of course, what Blinken said there about doing everything U.S. can to help people not bear the.
Oh, this is him touting the Jimmy line, which is we're going to be the gas supporter.
Consequences. He means selling them U.S. liquefied natural gas at a huge markup, making a big profit for the U.S. That's what he means by that.
And by the way, what huge markup? Again, this is if you want to talk about a death tax. The reason why Russia could sell it cheaper than the United States is because the United States is selling it at a cost from its suppliers based on the world market standard. Russia was underselling it to Germany, lowering the price artificially so that they could get permission to murder tens of thousands of people. In some cases, if you listen to Solovyov and all those assholes, 44 million people. We'll sell you cheap gas and help you build your industrial base. All you got to do is slow walk support for a country as we murder all 44 million of them. That's Aaron Mate's definition of cheap. If you have to murder someone in the commission of a theft, that lowers the cost of the endeavor. Burglary, robbery, That's your baseline. It's actually cheaper if you just, instead of having to worry about cutting some phone lines or cutting some security cables or going through all that, just smash the window in, go in there and fucking kill somebody, take their shit. It's way cheaper. It's cheap. It's cheaper money than going through all that fucking cat burglar bullshit.
Some good has to come from this.
And here's another one. This is most recently Victoria Nuland. She was before the Senate just a few weeks ago. And this is what she said about the Nord Stream 2. She's speaking to Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh, this is the part where, like, we're glad it's a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. It was, by the way, even before it was blown up, it's a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. There are no naturally occurring pipelines in the environment.
Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
But, yeah, you can be happy about something. Again, this is one of those things, like, somebody could be understandably pleased that Jeffrey Epstein is no longer alive. You know, like in conversation with somebody, you go, I think we're both very pleased that Jeffrey Epstein, is, did a chandelier impersonation very poorly and is no longer with us. That doesn't mean I had anything to do with it, or you either. I mean, what more do you need? Of course they're going to be glad about it. But again, it was already shut down. Germany had already set in motion the inability for it to be certified. And they didn't have a fucking choice. The EU had to sign off on it, and nobody else was going to. The only thing that was left was that Germany would go rogue in this, which they were not about to do. Again, another reason why Russia blew the fucking thing up themselves. But, who the fuck am I? I'm just a guy looking at all the evidence where Seymour Hersh has a source. He heard from a guy that said, what guy? We can't say. Here you go. Let's just, should we just do this? Okay. March 31st, 2022. Yeah, we were desperate to blow the fucking thing up. Yeah, if you look at the news, you look at economically, the gas trade, how things were. Yeah, it was. And by the way, it wasn't even online yet. Even if if they jump started it, it wouldn't come online, and it didn't need to be. They were still buying gas from Russia through other sources like Ukraine and Kazakhstan, where they had to pay transit fees. It's also why they encroached more on Georgia, so they wouldn't have to pay the transit fees, or quite frankly, so that Georgia would have to pay Russia transit fees for the 1,800 feet the fucking pipeline goes through, or the one city that they seized when they attacked Georgia and slowly creeped south to gain that land. Do you think these guys know that? I don't think they give a fuck. I think they can't even look at it for fear it will fuck their narrative. I'm almost done with the show, and this whole piece has just aggravated me. I had other stuff to talk about, and god damn it. But it's good, and we can cover this once and for all. Nobody gets to skate on the good they did in the past. And therefore, we got to swallow hook, line, and sinker what they're saying now. Especially in a situation when it comes to countries like Russia or China particularly, where they know if somebody comes out and they're like, this is a well-respected journalist or activist or politician who is known for going after, the failures of America. We know that this person, let's see, yeah. We know, and they're not the only country that does it. This is a strategy. Find somebody, especially in the 60s, 70s activist crowd that were very respected, the Woodwards and Bernsteins of the world, and try to get them on your side, either by hook or by crook. And when it's, by both of those methods is how they got Scott Ritter, it seems, or Matt Taibbi, that crowd, is that they just set them up with like, hey man, you lived here for years, we got you. Watch your mouth. If you ever come at us, it's going to be horrible for you. That's obviously common. That's been a problem for years. It's one of the best arguments, I think, for allowing gay people in the military and in the intelligence community especially, is because it used to be a primary manipulation point. You used to be able to use the fact that somebody was gay and the danger it caused to them to like ruining their life and ruining their getting them fired and all that kind of stuff. If you take that away, nobody can manipulate your spies or your diplomats because of their sexuality. If you go, we don't give a fuck about their sexuality, they're a human being and we got no laws against that. All of a sudden, you have just taken that knife out of your opponent's hand. And a knife, by the way, they had no need for in the first place. There's no reason for you to give them that. You gave them that weapon to use against you. You created the standard that says if anybody finds out that this person's gay, fire them. And they're like, oh shit, well that's easy. Thanks very much. Yeah, okay. So all I got to do is go send people around to see who bites, and anybody who's gay, we just take a picture of them, and then that point forward, we can either use them as a double agent or get them to kill themselves or quit. If they're really effective in their job, we can undermine them. Oh, great. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks, bigots, for helping us out. Like, that's one of the biggest reasons why you stop giving a rat's ass about that stuff. It's a national security imperative. You don't even have to be actually open-minded about LGBT issues in that regard. You can still be a bigot, but recognize that it's not in your own self-interest that they could manipulate people about that. Imagine if J. Edgar Hoover had been able to cross-dress all he wanted and nobody gave a fuck. I just think he would have been a much more easygoing fella. So, and I'll give you an example. Here's a good one. I was a big fan of Dennis Kucinich for a very long time. When he was running for governor of Ohio, it was found out that he got $20,000 from a pro-Syrian government group, which, by the way, is more than likely money funneled from Russia through Syria and their alliance. And he was forced to give it back, and it basically ended his run for governor. If it hadn't been, if he'd skated through and nobody had found out about that 20,000, and we'd have found out years later, anything that Dennis Kucinich had said about, fairness to the Syrian people or ending Syrian conflict or getting U.S. troops out of Syria or whatever movement he went, or not allowing National Guard from Ohio to serve in the military endeavors that allow for us to, send support to the Kurds or the Iraqis in northern Iraq and the Syrian border. If we'd have found that out after the fact, you can see why that would have been concerning. And this is what they do. Dennis Kucinich was a highly respected member of the political left in the United States. Many of you in the audience, myself included, thought of him as sort of a go-to, almost like the Ron Paul of the left in a lot of ways. Right? Does that make sense? Like, he was one of these guys, like, anti-war, nearly to a fault, and whereas Ron Paul would do it as from an isolationist standpoint, Kucinich was always kind of presenting it as there's no matter what you do, there's always an innocent person somewhere in the vicinity of an ongoing military conflict, and that reason alone, even if the other side is going to kill that person outright, you shouldn't participate in the possibility of doing it on your side, even if you're trying to save them. Just, hugs, not bombs, or whatever, that kind of idea. And your tendency is, I think like most people, is to go, yeah. Like, anytime we have an option where we don't have to be in a position like this, and we're going to cause more problems than we solve, get the fuck out. Absolutely. Still think that way. But curiously enough, Kucinich this was the thing that lost the governorship for him. Sorry. Oh my God, Hal, you just said a point that was so awesome. I said it first. I swear. Did anyone see it in the chat? I said blackmail, and then I brought the FBI in the 60s. That makes me feel cool. It's Water Goddess. You're absolutely right. Because that's what you do. You go and you find the people who are, both celebrities and activists and up-and-comers. It's one of the reasons why the Chinese sent somebody to try and coax Swalwell. It didn't work. But because they were like, oh, this guy, Swalwell, that's a strong-sounding name. This guy has a shot at president one day. Still does, by the way. So they just go and they either try to chisel away at that so that anybody that they're concerned about, they can undermine, or coax through, a honeypot, or coax through making you kind of deferential to that particular country because you have a friendly notion about it. And that's the soft power that most people use. China's just particularly terrible at it, and Russia doesn't even fucking bother anymore. But this is really consistent stuff. And so the idea that somehow we're supposed to read what this asshole is saying, and again, Jimmy Dore got $2,500 from early on from and an award from a pro-Syrian, pro-Assad front group. Mate and these guys get that kind of funding all the fucking time. I, however, rely on your super chats and your Patreon status. So please help out if you can, especially since I'm probably going to have to buy a new computer. Hopefully tomorrow, Rob Glenn and I are working tomorrow. Fingers crossed, we should be all right. But, wish me luck. Shit. All right, so let's finish this out since we got only a few minutes left.
So there we go. Now we know why.
No, you don't. Now you know that all of your assumptions now can line up with a single source story from Seymour Hersh, who should know better, in an editorial and propaganda screed, uneditorialized. I don't know how they do it. Unedited by a third party, anyways. Propaganda screed from Seymour Hersh, where he definitely has his thumb on the scale of the descriptives. Period. Even if he means well, Seymour Hersh is manipulating his readers on purpose.